It was a quiet morning in the small town of Green Hills, where the sun had just begun to peek over the horizon, casting its soft, golden light across the quiet streets. The air was still, as the town slowly woke up from its peaceful slumber. At the local animal shelter, a dog named Max lay quietly in his kennel. His once strong, alert eyes now seemed dull, and his body, though still large and imposing, had begun to lose its vitality. The years of faithful service to his family had begun to take their toll. Max had been a part of the Larson family since he was just a puppy. He had grown up with their son, Jacob, running through fields, playing fetch, and keeping the house safe. He had been their loyal companion through thick and thin. But over time, things had changed. Jacob had grown up, moved away for college, and Max, the once beloved pet, had become a mere shadow in the house. Anna, Max's owner, had always loved him, but after Jacob left, she became busier with work, and her attention shifted elsewhere. Max was no longer the energetic puppy that ran alongside her every morning. Instead, he was left alone in the backyard for hours, day after day. Over time, his health began to decline, and his once shiny coat started to lose its luster. His joints ached, and his steps became slower. The love that once flowed so freely between him and his family had become a distant memory, replaced by indifference. One day, Anna made the difficult decision to send Max to the local shelter. She couldn't handle the responsibility anymore. She didn't know what else to do. The shelter, though kind and well-kept, couldn't replace the love and care Max once had. There, Max lay in his kennel, his body still strong but his heart broken. "Max, come on, buddy. Eat something," called Sophia, a young volunteer at the shelter. She had been watching the large dog closely for the past few days. Max was not eating, not moving much. His sad eyes followed her as she placed the food bowl in front of him, but he didn't make a move to eat. Sophia was concerned. Max had been at the shelter for weeks now, and she had noticed his spirit fading. Sophia walked over to the kennel, crouching down to Max's level. She softly patted his head, but he didn't respond. His fur was matted, and his breathing shallow. "What happened to you, old friend?" she whispered. She glanced up at Sergey, the shelter's senior veterinarian. He had been watching the scene with a quiet intensity, his experienced eyes noting every small detail. "Sergey, what's going on with Max?" Sophia asked, her voice filled with concern. Sergey sighed and walked over to Max's kennel. He bent down to inspect the dog, gently running his fingers through the fur along Max's back. After a moment, he stood up straight, his expression grim. "Max is healthy. Physically, there are no signs of illness or injury, but his muscles have atrophied, and his energy is gone. His mind is broken." Is it a disease?" Sophia asked, her voice quivering. "No," Sergey replied softly. "This is something deeper, something emotional. Max has been abandoned. The trauma of being left behind by the people he trusted has crushed him. Without love, a dog like him can give up on life." He paused, looking at Max with pity. "There's nothing medically wrong with him. This is emotional, not physical. He needs the love he once had." Sophia's heart sank as she looked at Max, who had closed his eyes, laying still on the cold concrete floor of his kennel. He was not the energetic, playful dog he had been years ago. He had become a shell of the dog he once was. Sophia knew there was little they could do now. Anna had made her choice to abandon him, and Max had no family left to care for him. His life had been reduced to this cage, this loneliness. And yet, Sergey didn't give up hope. He was a man who believed that every living being deserved a chance at redemption, at happiness. But Max needed more than just basic care. He needed someone to love him, to remind him that he mattered. That's the only thing that could save him now. As the days passed, Sophia visited Max daily, always hoping for some sign of improvement. She brought him treats, spoke to him softly, but still, he remained unmoved. His body was there, but his soul seemed to have left him long ago. Max's story, however, was just beginning to unfold, for fate had other plans for him, and it was in the most unlikely of ways that his life would begin to change. The days dragged on slowly for Max. Each morning, He would lay in his corner of the shelter, watching the volunteers bustle about, attending to other dogs who still had hope, still had life in their eyes. His body had grown accustomed to the stillness, the quiet, the neglect. His once energetic tail no longer wagged in excitement when someone approached. Instead, it rested limply by his side. Sophia, despite her growing concerns, continued to visit him daily. She would sit with him, her hand gently brushing over his matted fur. But each day, the bond she so desperately tried to rekindle seemed to slip further away. Max had grown so still that at times, she wondered if he had completely given up. It was as if he had accepted his fate, alone, forgotten, and abandoned. Sergei, the shelter's senior vet, had been watching Max with quiet contemplation. He had seen cases like this before, animals whose spirits were crushed by abandonment. But this was different. Max had been so loyal to his family, so devoted. His whole life had been devoted to them. And now, here he was, a shell of the dog he once was. Sergei had tried everything he could think of, but nothing seemed to work. Max's mind was broken, and it seemed like nothing could fix him. But deep down, Sergei wasn't ready to give up just yet. One rainy morning, as the shelter buzzed with activity, a new face walked through the door. A man in his mid-30s, dressed in a worn jacket and carrying a calm presence about him, stepped into the shelter. His name was Ilya Vladimirovich, a dog rehabilitation specialist with a reputation for helping even the most troubled animals. He had heard about Max's condition and, intrigued by the challenge, decided to pay the shelter a visit. Sophia, who was busy in the kennel area, immediately noticed him as he entered. "Hello, can I help you?" she asked politely, walking toward him with a warm smile. "Ilya Vladimirovich," the man said, introducing himself. "I'm here about the dog, Max." Sophia blinked in surprise. "You've heard about him?" "I have," Ilya said, nodding. "I specialize in dog rehabilitation, and a friend of mine who works here told me about Max. I'm here to see if I can help him." Sophia led Ilya to Max's kennel, her steps quickening with curiosity. She had heard of Ilya's reputation. He was known for his unconventional methods and his remarkable success with difficult cases. Max, however, seemed beyond hope. She wasn't sure if even Ilya would be able to help him. When Ilya saw Max lying motionless in the kennel, his face softened. The dog's once beautiful, thick coat was now dull and patchy, his bones jutting out slightly under his skin. Ilya knelt down slowly, careful not to startle him, and spoke in a low, gentle voice. "Hey there, Max," Ilya murmured softly. "I'm not here to hurt you. I just want to help." Max didn't respond. His eyes remained closed, his breathing shallow. Sophia watched from a distance, unsure of what to expect. She had seen others come and go, but no one had been able to break through to Max. Ilya sat quietly for a moment, observing the dog's body language. He could sense the heavy weight of sadness that hung over the old dog. It was as though Max had closed himself off from the world, waiting for something he didn't know how to find. Ilya reached into his pocket and pulled out a small treat, placing it gently in front of Max. "Come on, boy," Ilya whispered. "Just a little nibble. You deserve it." For a long time, there was no response. But then, ever so slightly, Max's eyes fluttered open. The faintest glimmer of curiosity sparked in his gaze. Ilya's patience paid off as Max, after a few moments, lifted his head and sniffed the treat. It was a small victory, but it was progress. Sophia, who had been watching from the doorway, couldn't help but feel a sense of hope rising in her chest. Could this man really help Max? She had been unsure. But now, seeing the faintest glimmer of life in Max's eyes, she dared to hope again. Ilya sat with Max for a while longer, speaking to him in soft, soothing tones. He didn't push the dog, but let him come to him on his own terms. When Max seemed to relax a bit, Ilya gently stroked his back, his touch slow and deliberate, offering comfort without overwhelming him. For the first time in a long while, Max's body relaxed under the touch, and his breathing became a little steadier. After a while, Ilya stood up. "He's not beyond saving," Ilya said, turning to Sophia. "But he needs more than just food and shelter. He needs attention, patience, and care. The trauma of abandonment has broken his spirit, but that's something we can work through. Sophia was amazed. She had almost given up hope herself, but now there was a chance for Max after all. She nodded eagerly. I'll do whatever it takes. Ilya smiled softly. Good, but it's going to take time, and we have to be patient with him. We need to rebuild his trust and show him that not all humans will leave him behind. Over the next few days, Ilya worked with Max using gentle, non-invasive methods to encourage him to trust again. Slowly but surely, Max began to show signs of improvement. He ate a little more each day, and his energy, while still low, began to return. Ilya's presence seemed to give Max a sense of calm, and for the first time in a long time, he began to wag his tail again. One morning, after weeks of care, Ilya stood by Max's kennel with a big smile on his face. Sophia, he called, come look at this. Sophia hurried over, her heart pounding with excitement. When she saw what Ilya was pointing to, she couldn't believe her eyes. Max was standing on his feet, albeit shakily, but he was standing. His tail was wagging softly, and his eyes shone with a faint spark of life. I can't believe it, Sophia whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. He's coming back. Ilya nodded, his face filled with pride. He's not there yet, but this is a huge step. With more time, he'll be back to his old self. Sophia could hardly believe what she was hearing. Max was getting better. He was healing. The hopeless dog who had once given up on life was slowly coming back to the world. It had been weeks since Ilya's intervention, and Max was transforming before their eyes. The dog that once lay motionless in the corner of the shelter now walked with a renewed sense of purpose. His steps were slow, but they were steady. His eyes no longer held that empty, distant look. They gleamed with life and curiosity. Slowly, the old, tired dog that had given up was being replaced by a more vibrant, alert version of himself. Sophia, who had been there through it all, couldn't help but be amazed at the progress. She had seen Ilya's methods work wonders, but she never truly imagined Max could recover like this. The bond between them had strengthened over time, but the shift she had witnessed in Max was something more profound. It wasn't just the physical healing, it was the emotional healing too. Max had learned to trust again, and that trust was transforming him. One afternoon, as the sun was beginning to set, Sophia stood by the fence of the shelter, watching Max and Ilya interact. Max was trotting alongside Ilya, his tail wagging furiously as the two of them moved in sync. Ilya had been working with him on some basic commands, and Max was eager to please, following every cue with surprising enthusiasm. It was as though Max had found a new lease on life, a sense of purpose that had been missing for so long. Sophia walked up to Ilya, her heart full of gratitude. I can hardly believe it. Max has come so far. Ilya smiled, watching the dog playfully chase after a ball. He's not out of the woods yet, but he's getting there. Sometimes all it takes is someone who believes in them, someone to show them they're worth the effort. Sophia nodded. I owe you so much. I didn't know if we could help him, but now I'm seeing the dog I thought we had lost forever. Max ran back to Ilya, wagging his tail so hard that his whole body seemed to shake with excitement. Ilya crouched down, his face full of affection as he patted the dog's head. You're a good boy, Max, a real survivor. Sophia watched the exchange with a smile. She had seen the change in Max, but more than that, she had seen the change in herself. Helping Max had reignited a spark in her heart, a reminder of the power of love and patience. She hadn't just been caring for Max, she had been healing her own heart too. But it wasn't just about Max anymore. As the days turned into weeks, Sophia realized that she had come to care deeply about Ilya. The bond they had formed through their shared goal of helping Max had grown into something more. They shared late-night conversations about animals, their pasts, their dreams for the future. It was through this shared experience that Sophia found herself opening up to him, feeling more alive than she had in years. One evening, after another long day of work, Ilya turned to her as they both sat on the porch, watching Max rest peacefully on the lawn. You know, Sophia, he said thoughtfully, I think we've both learned something important here. She raised an eyebrow. Curious. What do you mean? I think it's easy to forget sometimes. But animals, they don't just need food and shelter. They need love. They need companionship. And so do we. He paused, looking at her. We've both given a lot to Max, but maybe, just maybe, we could both learn something from him too. Sophia felt a warmth rise in her chest. And for the first time in a long while, she felt the kind of connection she had been missing. You're right, she said softly. We've been so focused on Max we forgot what it means to truly care for one another. In that moment, everything seemed to click into place. Max had not only found his way back to life, but in doing so, he had also brought Ilya and Sophia closer together. What began as a simple act of kindness had blossomed into something beautiful, a shared understanding, a connection, and a reminder that sometimes, all we need is the love and patience to heal. Max had found his way home, not just to the shelter, but to his place in the world. And in doing so, he had helped Ilya and Sophia find their own paths as well. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the three of them, Max, Ilya, and Sophia, stood together, stronger than ever, ready to face whatever the future held. Together, they had become a family, and for the first time in a long time, Max was not alone. The end.